You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome to the semi-final round here at Week 2, Season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. I am, for the first time, joined by aReNGee.
Hello, everybody. I know it's been a really long time since I've been back in the booth, but I'm really excited to be here today. And as he said, this is my first time casting with Truedawn, so hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. Bear just had some business to attend to, so we tagged in aReNGee. So get some new people in the booth. It's awesome. So we have on this side of the bracket, Lunex versus Tatsumaki is the game we are going to be spectating. On the other side of the bracket, there is Mochi versus Ilya K. So we will be jumping to that if this one finishes first. But until then, we will take a look at this matchup between Felon Control and Big Combre. Two pretty much like standard decks that we've seen throughout the game's history.
Yeah, so Tatsumaki's on just a very, very standard Big Combre. The only thing that jumps out to me between his two is he's playing a lot more Parliaments than usual, which should stand him in good stead as the control versus Combre matchups tend to go very long, so the Parliaments go up in value as you're going to get to that late game stage where you get the multiple owls.
Yeah, definitely. Parliament is one of the premier cards, being generally a 2-for-1, also applying a fair amount of pressure. We did see Lunex's build in action earlier, and it is a bit more proactive than is traditional. There are Varas, Channel the Tempest, Thunderstrike Dragons, Champion of Cunning. So he's not going to be sitting back in his heels a lot, solely reacting to what Tatsumaki's doing. He does have the ability to turn the corner sooner than Tatsumaki may be expecting.
Yeah, he's also got a couple of interesting sideboard options, which he may elect to bring in. Notably, 3 Rain of Frogs. If he manages to hit one of the Combre's big cards, something like a Seraph, the Mystic Ascendant, something like that, he can really ease off the pressure on him. And he does have the Witch Harbinger combo, so he can reset the board if it does get too far out of his favor. Finally, we might see that spicy last word come in as just a really good way to punch through all of the big Combre nonsense. And I'm excited to see how this matchup plays out.
Yep, and we are now in the early turns of Game 1 of our best of 5. Tatsumaki is not having a lot going on. He will be able to play the Combre healer if he draws power into the Sandstorm Titan, and that will be enough to start applying pressure to a Lunex. That's not a lot. It's pretty anemic. And he also missed the power. He's going to need to hit that next turn. On the side of Lunex, he has a pretty interactive hand. The 3 removal spells and the Steward also threaten this trade with pretty much everything. So he's going to be able to blunt a lot of what Tatsumaki is presenting, even especially considering Tatsumaki just missed a power drop. So Lunex looking pretty good here in the early stages, although if Tatsumaki is able to draw out of this, he does have a handful of business.
Yeah, the Felon control decks, they don't usually put on too much early pressure. So even if Tatsumaki keeps missing, 2-3 more turns, as long as he does eventually draw a string of power, he's going to be able to get back into it. Since Lunex is sitting on just this lone threat for the moment, he's really not going to put Tatsumaki under any heavy pressure anytime soon.
Yeah, some things he could draw, though. If he draws Champion of Cunning off the top, he will be able to play the Shadow Sigil to reach threshold on both sides, and that ticks up the clock pretty heavily. So that's something Lunex can certainly draw to. Also, there is a Zendel's Gift and Celestial Omen for Zendel's Gift could definitely heavily punish Tatsumaki for being stuck on power. The Sandstorm Titan is a good threat on the board, but as we see, the Annihilate will take care of that. Withering Witch, not great in the current situation. Only really a 2-5 in play right now, so Lunex is forced to pass. Just get into the late game, which if Tatsumaki draws power, and he does there, is going to probably favor him, although both decks do certainly have a fair amount of top end. I do think that Mystic Ascendants and Parliament will generally outrumble the couple Varas and the Channel the Tempest that Lunex does have access to.
Yeah, interesting that he passed on the Marshal. Looks like he's really just trying to get that extra power out of it, and sure, he just assumes that it's going to die instantly, so he wants to get the value. As you mentioned, Illuminix does have 3 copies of Champion of Cunning in his list with no Felon Strangers to back him up. So the fact that he naturally had it completely activated on turn 5 is something that I'm very jealous of, but should serve him in good stead as the large Aegis threat will be quite powerful against the Cumbre.
Yeah, that just draws it. And also, Lunex is sitting on Witch Harbinger, so if Tatsumaki ever extends out too far, he does get to wipe up the board. Tatsumaki definitely saving this power, so this turn he can go Martial Ironthorn into power, effectively getting another card, leaving up Desert Marshal. So now he's starting to turn the corner, getting up to power totals that allow him to really present some potent threats. Although he really only has this Great Parliament as something that's particularly potent. I guess the 3/3 flyers do indeed matter, but the Black Sky Harbinger, it can just hold those by itself.
Yeah, I imagine given his slow start, Tatsumaki's going to be looking to build up his power base. Eventually find either a couple more parliaments to reload with, or maybe a stand together to protect against the Witch Harbinger combo, and just sort of run Illunex out of resources. He's low on. Tatsumaki has the advantage in cards in hand. As long as he can weather this champion that's now coming down, he should be okay to just build towards the late game.
Yeah, and Illunex is almost enough power to Witch and Harbinger in the same turn. We do see that the Desert Marshal is going to come down, likely meaning that we're also going to see this Valkyrie to fully silence the Champion of Cunning to stop it from pumping other creatures. It's possible that Lunex would play around Scorpion Wasp, so Tatsumaki didn't want to fully rely on that alone. But it's actually going to be a harsh rule, it looks like, which seems like completely reasonable. It's a card that isn't particularly easy to leverage in this matchup. There are a lot of creatures, and several of them have Aegis, so this is likely as good a spot as any as you're going to get for harsh rule. And Tatsumaki will be able to follow this up next turn with 2 Owls from Great Parliament.
Yeah, none of the units that he had in play were really all that important to his core game plan, so he doesn't really mind spending them. And like you said, it is difficult to use harsh rule, so a spot where he doesn't have any of his important units on the board, but Illunex does, really works out in his favor there.
Yep, and Illunex does have the ability to wipe this board on demand. He did get up to 11 mana, so he can play Witch Harbinger whenever he feels like it, which is probably going to be pretty soon, considering he is at 11 facing down a power. He could wait one more turn. The Combat deck doesn't have reach. You can be a little liberal with your life total. We'll see how aggressive he's willing to be. But the Permafrost off the top is looking like it's incentivized him enough to play it, but maybe not. And we do see the Witch Harbinger come down, take care of these 2 Owls, and now Illunex does have initiative. Granted, Tatsumaki has answers to the Harbinger in order to get back on the aggressive.
Yeah, this isn't the most aggressive board, and it is looks like it's being answered by a couple of units of its own. Tatsumaki staying on the aggressive with the 3/3 flyer. He doesn't have any of his big units in hand. When he draws them, they'll still be good. Looks like he's just trying to, keep Illunex on the back front, make him use his removal rather than saving it for the choice targets.
And I do like Illunex not getting overly aggressive. He could have Deathstruck the Comber Healer and jammed in, starting to get a clock on, but there are much bigger fish to fry, as we see here. This Mystic Ascendant off the top is a card that would be able to help Tatsumaki snowball the game, but Illunex definitely held this Death Strike and will be able to kill it. He's going to attack in first, I guess. Okay, never mind. He's going to kill it. I doubt that the block happens. Do like pulse checking your opponent, but he's just going to start jamming in with the Death Touch creature.
Well, I mean, even if he attacked beforehand, he does run the risk of running into a Desert Marshal block, which could have happened. So just tight play to make the Death Strike first, since you're going to do it anyway.
And that is an above-average hit off of the Seraph. We have the Ancient Terrazon, doubled in strength and toughness to 16/16. That card is immune to damage, so it does not care about lethal at all. So it will be able to freely come in. I imagine that the Withering Witch will just go right under the bus. And now there's also a 12/10, which does actually get checked by the Steward of the Past. Now the Annihilate off the top deals with the Ancient Terrazon. So Illunex is trying to battle back with the Seraph, but the Seraph is just going to keep making dudes every turn, and Illunex can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, that was it. It was a fortunate Annihilate, since Terrazon not usually that good, since it does die to that Annihilate compared to being good against a fire-based deck. But here, He's got the deadly unit to hold off one of those 12-10s, but apparently these dinosaurs have been working out and they're pretty angry. Oh,
Yeah. And the Cello Tempest is a good card off the top, and a Permafrost to deal with the other 12-10 that he couldn't previously deal with, or Death Strike, whichever he prefers. And now he's going to be able to blunt most of what's going on in the board. Although, worth noting, because he is electing to Death Strike instead of Permafrost, the top deck Mystic Ascendant off for Tatsumaki is actually going to go unchecked. It won't be able to attack and block, but that's not the important part about that card.
So that was actually Illunex's last Death Strike. He no longer has any copies, so he's just down to how many Annihilates has he used? 1, 2?
2, but he did draw a Cello Tempest off the top, so that will take care of the Mystic Ascendant, fortunately for Illunex. Also drawing him 3 cards. So he is starting to make some forward progress. His hand is actually not that great. He does have another Witch Storm combo, but he's still lacking in a way to actually turn the corner.
And he's exhausted all of his hard removal. He's down to just his permafrost. So if Tatsumaki can get a Mystic Ascendant to stick, he should be able to win the... Oh, forget about the value game, guys. We've got an Azendel's Gift coming down.
Yep, and that will force these wasps to just come into play and start being 1/1 Death Touch, which, like, Linux is at 16. Like, they'll start chipping in. It might matter, but this Vanquish is going to go away some number of power. Tatsumaki can, of course, cast anything he can draw at 13 power, but this inhibits the potency of cards like Mystic Ascendant, prevents him from cobbling together several synergistic cards like Mystic Ascendant, Iron Thorn. So the Azendel's Gift is certainly a thorn in the side, and now that Illunex has access to like a Witch in Avara's favor, he can deal with the threat. He has this Black Sky Harbinger, which currently can't really do anything. So both players are like mostly stalled, and it's going to be a top deck war between Illunex and Tatsumaki within a gift in play.
Well, you always got to favor the player without the gift, right? Since they can sandbag their removal spells. Tatsumaki is drawing these can draw Vanquish, which he would like to save for a Vera or a champion or something like that, but just go the way of the gift because there are no targets. As we see here, the aforementioned Vanquish. And he's forced into a racing war where Combray, with this board, doesn't really want to be.
Yeah, and now it's like if he draws a Champion of Conning, that's going to end the game very quickly. He can also has access to 2 Varas, which could resurrect the champion that died earlier. It did not get silenced. It died to Harsh Rule, so it still retains all of its abilities. The Seraph off the top from Tatsumaki is one of the better possible draws. You'll have to hit something good, though, because it's going to get permafrosted on the untap, and a Minotaur Grunt is not exactly what you're looking for.
Well, it can actually attack into the Harbinger, so maybe we can get something. But here's a Vera, and that's a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it's going to get back this champion who is fully powered. It will pump up this Black Sky Harbinger. It's actually worth considering permafrosting the Wasp to like get your flyers through, but we do see that Illunex making the safe play. He's like kind of content to trade this Black Sky Harbinger, especially considering he has the Withering Witch in hand. So at any point he could play the Withering Witch, resurrect the Black Sky Harbinger, wipe the board, and get his Harbinger back. So it's a pretty safe attack.
I imagine you do that this turn, since it's just lethal. Or, sorry, on the upcoming turn?
Yes, on the upcoming turn, it is a lot of damage.
So, Illunex will take game 1.
Actually, does he have another Harbinger in the yard? I think it's silenced. Yeah, the other Harbinger's silenced, so I don't know if he can punch through the Wasp this turn, although he still gets to attack with the Harbinger that's currently in play. It'll probably have to trade with the Valkyrie, or Scorpion West it's currently on the board, and then he can res it afterwards. So it doesn't have lethal quite yet, but this is largely an insurmountable board. One of the outs is Harsh Rule, but that still leaves the champion in play, who is going to be attacking for quite a bit of damage.
If Illunex wanted to get in with that champion, he should have attacked before playing his units. But the Wasp is forced out, and
Desert Marshal would have been good a while ago, but it's too little too late, and we will see Tatsumaki concede game one, and we should be quickly moving into game two. And that was a pretty back and forth battle. Got to the late game. Both players got to implement large portions of their game plan. And Lunex, even though he would look behind for large portions of that game, was able to stick the gift, lock out a lot of what Tatsumaki was doing, deal with the important cards, mainly the Mystic Ascendants, and turn the corner with his Champion of Cunning.
Yeah, there we just saw the combo deck wasn't quite able to be firing on all cylinders. Illunex did run himself out of hard removal, but he was able to use that hard removal effectively to remove nearly everything that Tatsumaki was throwing at him, and then it was just a case of drawing those small utility units isn't what you want to be doing when you're facing down the Vera.
Yeah, and Illunex kept a little bit of a loose hand. It was 2 power with 8 drop and a 7 drop, and he drew another 8 drop. So he's been fortunate to draw into a few power since then, and then there's another one. So he's doing a good job of like getting to that point. But he's the most inexpensive card in his hand is still a 5 drop. So if Tatsumaki is able to put on a pressure and like any pressure at all, which currently he's not able to do, only this Combre Healer, he could have been able to really punish Lunex for keeping a glacially slow hand.
Well, Lunex has drawn well, I would say. It looks like he's going to have that champion active on 5, which is ridiculous given what his hand is starting with, and the man just keeps top decking power.
Yeah, it will have the primal side on, so it will be a 5/5 flying Aegis, which is still excellent. It will not be pumping power, but that may not be necessary. And there is another seed. Just keep runner for the whole game, apparently.
The deck is on Ilunex's side here. Fortunately, the Scorpion Wasp this time is going to be a better fit against the champion, since there's nothing else in play for it to pump right now, and should be able to take it down unless Ilunex chooses to use one of his precious death strikes to protect the score or to protect his champion and take down the Wasp. Alternatively, you could use 2 silences to take down the champion. Not sure if that is the preferable line for Tatsumaki, though.
Yeah, that does leave the 5/5 in play, which like you can't really rumble with profitably. Although it does look like it's what he's currently inclined to do. Although maybe he's just taking off the Aegis and then Scorpion Wasping. It's unclear at this point. I think Desert Marshals is what we're likely to see, and then some form of gang block. Ilunex has a lot of options. Well, actually, just Black Sky Harbinger, but he also can attack, blow up the double block with Death Strike, which is, if that is the path Tatsumaki likes to go, that would be kind of gross. He will just play safely with the Wasp. So he was planning to extend out the 3/3 flyer to be a little more protective anyway. The Removing the Aegis was just like kind of a bluff. So the Black Sky Harbinger will come down and stabilize things, really stop Tatsumaki from being able to attack. He could silence it with his Desert Marshal, which looks like he's inclined to do, and that allows him to get in for 3 damage in the air, at least temporarily.
I imagine with this line, Tatsumaki's looking to go more on the aggressive with his singular flyer, since his hand doesn't really have much other than a harsh roll, and reloading here isn't quite what he wants to do. We might see him proactively use those stand-togethers here to push through more damage.
Yeah, we do see the stand together get fired off there to protect the Desert Marshal from dying. It does remove the Aegises from the other creatures, but since Tatsumaki does have a second stand together, I think he's pretty okay with that. This is an interesting attack from the Valkyrie. But it is better because of the stand together, so that allows him to eat the Black Sky Harbinger. And now Tatsumaki is in pretty good shape. He has a lot of very large creatures, all with Aegis. And his hand is just so expensive. He's not going to be able to deploy enough of his current cards to actually do anything.
Yeah, Ilunix drew all those power, but actually sort of stalled on 6 with all those 8 drops in hand. So those cards that you were talking about in the very early game, he's held on to them and has not been able to get them out of his hand yet. So his options are a little limited.
Yeah, if he draws power, he gets to play Zendal's Gift, which certainly cuts off some options for Tatsumaki. And then if Vara is able to come into play, that is certainly a source of inevitability for him to keep recurring things like Withering Witch and the unsilenced Black Sky Harbinger. So if he draws running power again, he certainly has stuff going on that he can use to turn the corner, but he doesn't have a great deal of time. He might need to fire off a Death Strike on this 5-power flyer, but then there's also this Mystic Ascendant now that has entered play that is something that Ilunex is likely going to need to deal with as well.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit with the Lunex's sequencing with the Witch and the Permafrost a couple turns ago. Had he played the Witch first, he could have Permafrosted the 5/5, which I think would have put him in a bit better shape. But as you said, he's completely desperate for power, so he fires off his draw spell and unfortunately doesn't find the undepleted power. Does find the Seek power and is now well set up for if he can get to these Vera chains, might bring him back, but he's facing a lot of heavy pressure with that active Mystic Ascendant.
Yeah, I mean the Var Chain is going to be incredibly powerful. He can actually like chump block a bit and then get to a point where he can reanimate both Witch and Harbinger, wipe everything up, and like be super far ahead. And even if he just plays Gift next turn, that is also good. But he's running at a time. This clock is not trivial. You're definitely right about the Permafrost play. That Valkyrie has now done 10 damage that it probably should not have done. So Lunix does not have a lot of time, but if he draws a power this turn in particular, I think he's going to be okay. And he did not, unfortunately, just a Lightning Storm. Although Lightning Storm plus Death Strike does alleviate a lot of this pressure, takes out pretty much everything, actually. There's no longer a profitable attack on the side of Tatsumaki. So things are getting stabilized, and Lunix only needs a little bit more time to start chaining these Varas.
Yeah, he with that lightning strike, it didn't look like a good draw initially, but combined with the death strike, just shut down Tatsumaki's offense completely. And now Lunix is able to stabilize with the Veras without even having exposed them yet. Tatsumaki is sitting on a harsh rule, so the first one's probably not going to get that much value, well, or not that much long-term value, since I imagine it will just meet with a harsh rule. But the second one's going to be good.
Yeah, and actually, this gift is very good because we see in Tatsumaki's hand he does have a harsh roll, which is now going to get discarded at the end of turn. So Lunex can be a lot more liberal with how he extends into the board. And even 8 power also represents Channel the Tempest, which he can use to kill this Seraph. He gets a depleted power that turn, not exactly what he wanted, but he will be able to deploy this Felon Bloodcaster. And as long as Seraph doesn't hit anything overly threatening, they're in a reasonable shape. Although this Great Parliament is actually probably more threatening than most things, at least the average case hit for Seraph. So we do see Tatsumaki elect to play Parliament in lieu of ultimating Seraph. Now the Vara's favor, or the Vara, just real Vara will come down on the side of a Lunex, and will lead off with the Withering Witch, bring everything down to 1, and now he just needs to untap, play the other Vara or any shadow creature, bring back the Black Sky Harbinger, and that's it for Tatsumaki.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that you can hit off of Seraph that's going to turn this one around here.
There's always Ikaria. Ikaria is always great.
I guess Ikaria would be lethal there. Yeah. Okay, so.
Well, 4th Tree Elder is actually pretty good because 4th Tree Elder is going to survive the Harbinger. Granted, the Harbinger can jump block it, but it is threatening lethal. So the Lunex will get to play the Vara or the Bloodcast, whichever they prefer. They will go with the Vara and now get Champion of Cunning, Black Sky. So the 4th Tree Elder will be the only thing that remains on the side of Tatsumaki, and it's going to be facing down quite an army, and I don't believe it can really contest things.
Harsh rule this turn could be close to turning it back around, leaving just the champion in play. But that
like the
Vanquish,
channel to refill, and like Lunex's hand is actually still loaded. So yeah, Lunex's deck actually seems very well set up for this matchup. The top end with the Varas and the Channel of the Tempest and the just with the Witch Storm combo to wipe his opponent's board just has been very powerful, and it's Tatsumaki's not been able to turn the corner fast enough and like been able to put enough pressure on a Lunex to kill him before he gets to the point of being able to like deploy all this stuff. Like we saw this game where a Lunex just stumbled on power. He kept like a hand with 1,000,000 7-drops, and Tatsumaki was not able to punish him for that. His deck is too slow for it. So in that matchup, like you just get to your Varas and jam. We're good.
Yes.
So the 4th Tree Elder will come in, and actually the Champion of Cunning will be the thing to chump block. But it looks like this is just going to be a really big attack. I think it probably is lethal. -8, 13. No, it looks a little short.
That's an interesting attack. I think you should just send everything there.
Yeah, I
Not
think
sure.
sending everything is fine because they're gonna block the VAR anyway. But it doesn't appear to matter a whole bunch as Tatsumaki will concede the game, and Linux goes up 2-0, and now Tatsumaki needs to find an answer in his sideboard to claw back and try and cobble together the reverse sweep.
Well, his sideboard is not holding a whole lot that I can see here. He's got protects, which are good against the spot removal, which may or may not come in depending on how much Tatsumaki values his individual threats. Decay's not going to be great against anything except for the singleton. Azendel's Gift is the big one, but holding Decay seems worse than holding Protect to block
Yeah,
Gift.
definitely. Protect has
Stand
other applications as
Togethers,
well.
yeah. Stand Together is probably going to come in. Healer's Cloak, not for this matchup. I don't think you bring in the harsh rules since you do. It feels like the Found Control deck is out late gaming the big Comrade deck, at
Yeah.
least with this particular build.
And for that reason, I actually like Steward of Prophecy. Steward of Prophecy seems very powerful in this matchup. Hitting both Vara and Champion of Cunning are huge hits. Even like Withering Witch matters, Lexi Harbinger, like pretty much every creature actually in Lux's deck is a good target for Steward of Prophecy. So I think that's one of the more powerful cards Tatsumaki can bring to bear here. And it's also likely that Lunex has one of those targets in his hand because it takes him so long to deploy his threats.
Yeah. Those should probably be coming in. Looking at just his last cards that he has here, do you give any thoughts to bringing in the Awakened students and going on the beatdown plan? That has been the strategy in some Combrei versus Control matchups in the past.
It's certainly an option. You have the choice between being more aggressive or trying to bolster your end game. Both are viable options. Both are things we've seen from Combrei decks. The ability to augment how fast or slow your deck is one of the hallmarks of our the good Combrei decks we've seen. We have moved a few turns into the game here, just largely set up. Not a lot has happened. A 3/3 Valkyrie Enforcer has been deployed. Is jamming in for 3. Lunix content to let that happen. He doesn't have a Death Strike to kill it, but there are bigger fish to fry. He will probably fire off either an Annihilate or Death Strike on the Sandstorm Titan. He's going to favor the Annihilate here, even though it's worse mana-wise. It does allow for the Death Strike to hit a wider range of targets. Annihilate is more narrow.
Yeah. With that, the board has sort of stabilized a little bit in Lunex's favor. He is getting hit for 3 in the air, but anything on the ground is going to be dealt with by the Steward. And we do see that Tatsumaki brought in the Protect, so he's favoring that as more of a sort of a catch-all answer to whatever Lunex can throw out at him.
Yeah, and this he has one away on both sides of the threshold for his Champion of Cunning. And he will need to deal with this 3/3 at some point, but you just have some time. Like we talked about before, you can be a bit liberal with your life total against Combrei. They really don't have reach or charge damage. So whatever they have on the board is likely what you're taking. So as we just develop here into the middle turns of the game, Tatsumaki's just going to be jamming in here for 5. He can choose to deploy Sandstorm Titan, which we do see him elect to do. He does get to even leave up Protect and Desert Marshal. But I imagine the Protect is for the Mystic Ascendant. I think he might just let this Death Strike happen. But we do see him want to preserve his board state, want to keep the beatdowns going, which I can certainly see as reasonable.
So taking this line with the Protect up, that's okay. So changing lines completely, Tatsumaki has brought in Decays. That's an interesting choice here. It looks like he is planning to go for the late game build and try to survive the Azendel's Gift that's there, or
it's also reasonable to assume these the last word came in. Last word is one of the better cards against Combrei because Combrei generally just plays one creature per turn, and you can just kind of soft lock them out of the game with the last word. So it does have applications there. It's interesting to see a Lunex get a little impatient and fire off the champion without Aegis, and he will get punished for it here with the Desert Marshal. It is still a 5/5, but he wasn't really under much pressure to do anything. I think he could have waited a little bit, tried to find the blue source, and forced multiple cards out of Tatsumaki to deal with his champion.
yeah, I'm I'm a little bit confused about what's going on in some of the choices, but that attack specifically did not seem great to me since he just chumped with a Marshall. He did hold on to the Vanquish, but a champion comes down and now he's facing down a pretty big board.
Yeah, this will be dealt with via the silence removing Aegis and the Vanquish fully killing it. But his blocks aren't great on the back end. He can double block to kill the 7-5, but then there's still a 5-5 in play. His 3-1 is chipping in, and the race is kind of close. But alunex does have a Channel the Tempest in hand that he will be able to play next turn and could either kill the flyer in the air or potentially just Tatsumaki.
Uh, yeah, he's Tatsumaki's kind of priced himself into a bit of an odd situation. In that he keeps pushing for damage. You would have imagined that if he was trying to race, he would have vanquished the blocker and got in with all of them. But he does stabilize the board a bit here with the Iron Thorn staring at the 5-5, which alunex is going to take down with that Channel the Tempest, we imagine.
And it's interesting here from the side of Alunex. You can attack with the Stewart first, and if they don't block, you have lethal. But Alunex decides it's a little too greedy, just wants to be conservative, wants to keep his 5-5 for sure, and is just going to jam in. He has put himself dead to a stand together, but if he doesn't have that, he's in pretty good shape.
Well, Tatsumaki finds the power for the Mystic Ascendant and doesn't find anything off the draw. He can put a Lunix to 1, and I think that's preferable to staying back. You do just die to a removal spell if you attack here, but I don't think you have any outs to win the game if you jump block.
Yeah, I think if your 6-6 is dying, you're probably dying, but because like this happens, right? You have to just chump block and you have an empty board versus the 5-5. So I guess in either case, putting them to 1 didn't matter a lot. There is a decay on the side of Tatsumaki to deal with the last word, but that'll put him exactly to 5. And unfortunately for Tatsumaki, that is the amount of damage the Steward of the Past will attack for. So we will see the GG on both sides, and Tatsumaki will drop to alunex 3-0. Just a good game by both players. Really impressive performance by alunex to overcome the Combray deck. Really solid build from him with the Varas. I do like the Varas a lot. I've often said that Felon Control can't really afford to be just sit on its heels, like remove all your stuff and win with whatever. I think you need a cohesive, proactive game plan. And alunex certainly has that in the form of those Varas, the Channel of Tempest, Champion of Cunning, more specifically, and just the ability to actually present hard to deal with threats in addition to Felon's universal answers has proven to be like just a pretty good formula for him in this tournament.
Yeah, just he's built down the Felon Control deck into sort of every unit he has gets him some sort of extreme late game value, from the Bloodcasters to the Witches to the Harbingers to the Vera. He doesn't really have any bad cards to bring back, so just having access to an extra toolbox of all these powerful summon effects is certainly standing him well. Instead, as we saw there, it lets him go toe to toe with Big Combray's late game, which Big Combray is touted as one of the late game decks out there. So that's pretty impressive.
Yep, this is actually why I've advocated for Vodkin in a lot of Big Combat decks, because it actually does allow you to go over the top of everything. Mystic Cassette and Iron Throne are good, but it's just like 2 cards a turn. There are things that can go over the top of it. There are things that can match it at parity. Nothing matches Vodkin drawing your deck. So if you want to go over the top, that's what I've advised for people to do. It doesn't come at a huge cost in the rest of their deck. But we do actually have a result from the other side of the bracket as well. Moshe has won his match over Ilya K with his Time Justice Primal Chalice deck. So we will actually be seeing Crystalline Chalice in the finals against Felon Control.
Yeah, Moosh I believe he's on his way to a 9-0 run. And that's something that we don't actually see all that often, although I know last week Unearthly did it with Rakano, so maybe you don't need to go that fast just to close out a tournament like this. I'm really interested to see this Chalice deck in action again in the finals, and especially see how it stands up against Alunix's Felon Control, which we just saw there. It can go late as good as anybody.
Yep, I imagine like the Withering Witch and Black Star Harbinger combo will come up, and the Varas, but we will certainly see how all of that plays out after we take our short break to set up for the finals. So don't go anywhere. We will have that match for you shortly. See you soon.